That's one of the really cool things about flying, both in Canada or anywhere else, is that you get such a unique perspective. That's kind of exciting. I mean, you go into a foreign land and foreign countries, and not only are you experiencing, the different culture and the different people, but in addition to that, you're experiencing them from a different perspective than almost anybody else gets to experience.
I'm Peter McCulley. The Porters, a BC family of 5, are set to fly around the world in a single-engine plane. We'll talk about how they hope to complete the flight over the next 14 months and their goal of raising $1 million for charity while on the trip, when Today in BC continues.
From the latest community news to informative, entertaining reads for travelers and the cannabis curious, just visit your local Black Press Media community newspaper website to sign up today.
We're chatting with Ian and Michelle Porter, husband and wife team from Vancouver, who, along with their children, are planning to fly around the world in a single-engine plane. Thanks for joining us today.
Pleased to be here, Peter.
Yeah, Peter, pleased to meet you. Thanks for talking to us.
Who's the pilot in the family, or perhaps you're both licensed to fly?
Yeah, I've been a pilot since I was about 19 years old. I learned to fly in Ontario on a little dirt strip. Then I had a decision about whether to become a commercial pilot and fly for a living or not. It was a coin flip, and I decided not to. So I didn't then fly for quite a while, although I did get back into flying paragliders in various places around both British Columbia and all over the world. And then I started flying sailplanes, gliders for a while before I got back into flying fixed-wing aircraft.
Michelle, have you always been a willing passenger over the years as Ian flies here and there, or are you two world travelers and this is just a different way to see some of the places you've already been to?
Oh, that's a great question. We've traveled in all different kinds of aircraft together, short trips, longer trips. And yes, I'm a willing passenger. I wouldn't want to do this trip with anyone other than Ian. He's an incredible pilot. I have a lot of trust in his abilities. Throughout the world, we've traveled in planes and trains and automobiles and driven ourselves across Africa and India. It's actually our way of traveling is to look after ourselves. And so oftentimes what we do in South America, all over the place, would be to rent a really great vehicle, a 4x4, and we take the kids along and we do our own self-guided trip. We've been all over the place, had fantastic experiences.
Now, I understand the two of your daughters are licensed pilots as well.
Yeah, that's right. Both of our eldest daughters, Samantha and Sydney, who are 21 and 18 right now, both basically started their flying lessons on the same day and also finished them on the same day about a year ago now, but they finished and got their pilot's licenses. We actually did a couple of extended trips today with their instructor in their plane and myself in my plane. One of them, during their flight training, we flew up to the Yukon, and then later on in their flight training, we flew actually across Canada and back, just getting them some real-life flying experience during their training. Most people that are training to learn to fly generally fly out of one airport, do all of their flight training at that same airport, and maybe do one small cross-country trip before they become licensed pilots. We kind of took a very different route on that, which was let's get some real-life, real-world flying experience, crossing the Rockies. The summer we did that was plagued by the wildfires and smoke and heat bubbles. It was a great learning experience for them.
Who all will be in the plane taking the trip as you try to fly around the world?
Well, it'll be our whole family. So basically Michelle and I and our 3 kids, Samantha, Sydney, and Christopher. They're all excited about it. The timing-wise worked out that the year worked fairly well for everybody in that Samantha's taken a gap year from university, third year EBC. Sydney is graduating high school this spring and will be taking a gap year between high school and going to university. And Christopher, who's currently in grade 9, will be doing his grade 10 education while we travel. It actually worked out timing-wise fairly well for everybody.
Okay, you suppose that these youngsters are going to miss their friends and maybe their close relatives. You suppose that's made a little easier with social media?
Yeah, I think 100% it's made it a little easier. They've got a good, strong group of friends, all of them do, that they're going to keep in regular contact with. And we've also done a lot of travel in the past, and they understand that when they come back, not that much has changed, and their friends will still be there, and things will very much be the same.
So let's talk about the logistics of the trip for a minute. The plane you're flying is a GA8 Air Van. I understand it's made in Australia. Why did you choose that particular plane, and where did you find one?
The first thing we had to find was an airplane that could obviously take 5 people. plus our gear, plus enough fuel to fly a reasonable distance. That was the first criteria. The second one was we wanted an airplane that was safe and stable and robust, and that Sydney and Samantha could help out with the flying route, being that they're relatively low-time pilots. We also wanted basically a single-engine airplane that was robust and could land on unprepared strips, gravel strips, grass strips, whatever. Looking at the available planes, there weren't very many out there that fit that list of criteria. The GA8 Airvan made in Australia was kind of top of that list. And as happenstance would happen, one became available for sale actually in the lower mainland of BC. When that occurred, we sort of looked at each other and said, oh, we've got to jump on this thing and we've got to make it happen. So that's what we did.
So if you're planning to take 14 months to fly around the world in your Airvan, how do you get across the vast stretches of water that pop up every now and again?
Well, that's a great question. It really comes down to planning the route very carefully. And it is possible to fly most of the way or all the way around the world by minimizing the amount of time you have to spend out over open water. A lot of people that do solo or just two people in a plane who do round the world flights spend much more time doing very more direct routes, and they spend much more time out over open ocean. Our route is going to be done with much shorter segments, and that's why we're allowing much more time through the expedition. We're allowing 14 months. So, for example, crossing the North Atlantic, rather than taking a direct route across a wide open ocean between Canada and Greenland, we will be jumping between airports quite a far north, crossing over to Greenland, and then coming down the coast of Greenland and circling around it, versus taking a direct flight, over several hundred miles of open ocean.
Usually as we start out in life and grow a family, we accommodate, as George Carlin used to say, stuff. I can't even imagine the challenge of each of you being restricted to bringing along only 20 pounds of luggage because of weight restrictions on the plane. That would be quite restrictive. And maybe you could tell us what 20 pounds of personal belongings on a 14-month trip would actually look like.
The looks on the faces of the kids when Ian says, we're allowed to take 20 pounds each. And everyone just looked at each other and went, how are we going to do this? 20 pounds is quite a bit of gear. We were surprised. Our oldest daughter, Samantha, got up. She got a bag. She started stuffing hoodies and shorts and pants and everything in there. And she only came to 15 pounds. And she's like, wow, I had no idea. I can actually take more stuff. When we think of 20 pounds, we think it's so restrictive. But we'll be fine.
Well, it sounds like an epic trip. And when you talked about planning the route, have you planned out every detail, like every airport you're going to go to? Or, dare I say, are you just winging it here and there?
Well, it's much more the latter. I mean, we're part of the whole raison d'etre of this trip is low and slow. And we're taking 14 months. We're actually making sure that we don't overplan the trip. In other words, program every place we want to be on the date we want to be. One of the biggest reasons for that actually is the safety side of it. Taking 14 months and having a flexible schedule very much allows us to have a lot more control over basically flying or not flying on a particular day, which has a direct relation back to safety. In effect, if the weather is not good on a particular day, we are under no pressure to leave and go. We're just going to stay and find other things to do and postpone until the conditions are good. And frankly, the fly-in logistics, they're meaningful, they're significant, but they're actually probably not the biggest part of the logistical exercise. That's much more about, moving a family of 5 with COVID-19 out there, crossing borders, finding accommodation, keeping everybody happy and healthy. That side of the logistics is actually, to me, a little bit more daunting than the actual fly-in.
When Today in BC continues, we'll find out where in the world the Porters are heading and the charity they're hoping to raise $1 million for.
Why spend hours searching dealerships, comparing makes and models? Find the best of BC's inventory in one place, todaysdrive.com. You'll have access to inventory across BC, where you can easily find a vehicle that fits your needs and gets you where you need to go in comfort. Get in the driver's seat. Don't miss out on the many options we have available for you. Powered by Black Press Media, todaysdrive.com connects you with exclusive new and used car deals.
I'm Peter McCulley. Today in BC is a Black Press Media podcast. Ian, what do you do in the plane for long stretches on end? Is Wordle a thing in the air?
Well, it could be. We probably will do our Wordle before we get in the air each morning. Most of our legs of flying during the expedition are going to be relatively short, in the neighborhood of 1 to 2 hours. And we're flying VFR, visual flight rules. We're always going to be fairly close to the ground with things to look at, things to see. A lot of the people in the aircraft at any one time are going to be involved in that flight, in flight planning, in communications, etc. So there's activities that are happening. So actually, I don't think boredom is going to be anything that sort of ever really happens on the actual flying during the expedition.
That takes care of the question I had about, are we there yet?
Yes.
So you don't anticipate that your passengers will become bored and be looking for things to do because you'll only be in the air for a short period of time?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, that might become more of an issue when we're waiting. I've done flying expeditions around Alaska, around parts of South America, across Canada. The parts that get trying and let's call it boring are the waits before you can get in the air and go flying, particularly in countries outside of Canada, the U.S., and let's say Western Europe. There's quite often a lot of documentation and paperwork and stamps and approvals, etc., before you can actually get in the plane and fly that 1 or 2 hour flight. And that can quite often take more time than the actual flight itself. And I would say that's probably an area, if there is potential for people getting bored, twiddling their thumbs, it will be sitting in the lounge of an airport in somewhere in, let's say, a country in South America, waiting for 2 or 3 hours to get all the paperwork put together to actually get in the airplane and fly. But, we're prepared for that, and it's all part of the adventure.
Could you give us an overview of where the flight will take you generally?
Sure. We've divided the expedition into 2 stages. The first stage is we'll leave Vancouver. We're going to head north, try and get as far north as we can up to Tuktoyaktuk on the Arctic Ocean, across Canada to Newfoundland, then back to Wisconsin, where there's a major aviation gathering. And from there, we're going to start heading south, across the U.S., through the Caribbean, into South America. We'll circle all of South America, come up back through Central America, back into the U.S. and Canada, roughly about this time next year. And at that point, we'll start stage 2, which is heading across the North Atlantic via Greenland, Iceland, and then heading from there across Europe, down through Egypt, hopping across the Middle East to India, and then back around via Japan and up through to Alaska, back to Vancouver. The biggest logistical challenge over and above flying around the world is transiting the airspace of Russia because of obviously the events going on right now. Our initial plan for this expedition was in reverse. We're actually planning to cross Russia first. So that plan has been completely changed, but that's kind of the only part that we see as a logistical issue that we don't have a solution for right now.
Do you have a place or 2 or 3 that are the top of your list on places that you're looking forward to visiting?
There's parts of South America that I'm really curious to see by air, and that would be flying over the Amazon, flying coastal. There's just too many places to think. It's mind-boggling. So it's all good. I'm excited to see everything.
So I don't have a particular favorite place I'm looking forward to. I have a list as long as my arm of them. Every country has goods and bads and highs and lows. You kind of have to embrace that on an expedition or a trip like this.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a fantastic trip, especially for your children. What life lessons would you hope that they might pick up along the way?
This whole expedition really is about learning and hopefully, in some respects, educating people that we touch as well. But learning for the whole family. I mean, for myself and Michelle, and certainly for the kids as well. The kids right now are helping out kinds of ways, and they're learning how to plan this thing and do the logistics and navigate and plan for crossing borders. Another part of this that we're all learning is about making this expedition count for more and giving back to a charity.
Well, let's talk about the charity you're hoping to raise awareness and money for is the SOS Children's Villages Canada. Can you tell us about their work and how exactly you hope to raise funds for them?
We decided that we wanted to make this trip count for more. So we wanted to align ourselves with a charitable organization. We looked at the options. We said, what will that look like? And so first off, we wanted to work with a charity that promoted basically family values and basically looked after children. I mean, the commonalities with our family and children flying around the world. And we wanted to deal with an organization that, of course, had top-rate financial accountability, and that was involved not just in Canada, but in locations around the world. So when we started looking for charities, SOS Children's Villages basically checked all of those boxes. So we were very, very happy when they agreed they would work with us as a charitable partner on this expedition. We'll be raising funds for SOS Children's Villages through basically sponsorship and donations. So our family, probably similar to a lot of families like ourselves in Canada, we've been very kind of social media shy or careful for the last number of years our kids have been growing up. But we're actually having to shift gears now, and this is part of the education as well, frankly, for all of us, is become much more publicly open and engaging on social media. See that as a tool to get the message out and to help raise not just money for SOS Children's Villages, but also, which is important to them, is their profile in Canada. SOS has been around for well over 70 years. They operate in 130 odd countries around the world, but they don't have that same name recognition or profile in Canada. So in addition to us raising money for them to support their programs, we're also looking to work to basically increase their profile and get their name out there.
So you mentioned social media, so I assume that you're going to have a website or a Facebook page or something where folks can follow along and check out where you are in the world?
We actually have called the expedition 5 in the Sky, number 5 in the Sky. Our website is www.5inthesky.com, and 5 in the Sky will be kind of our social media handle in the various channels. Sydney, our daughter, put together the website and is managing that, and everybody's taken various roles.
One thing I wanted to add was that our Instagram ID is @fly5inthesky.
Okay, well, you'll be gone 14 months. What do you suppose will be the thing that you'll miss the most about being at home?
I think our children will say, and will agree, is we have 2 lovely dogs. They're going to miss them like crazy. Scooby, they're going to miss their friends, and of course our family. As you know, we'll keep in touch with everybody as we go. Certainly makes it so much easier with social media.
Yeah, and I might add that the last couple of years have been, crazy times with a lot of disruption and a lot of kind of new ways of doing things. So it's not as big a transition, it might have been if we hadn't have gone through what we've gone through for the last couple of years. So maybe that's a little positive out of the challenges of COVID.
I'd like to thank Ian and Michelle Porter for joining us on this edition of Today in BC. If you know of other cool things people in BC are doing, please let us know. Send us a voice message or an email to podcast@blackpress.ca. You may be part of our podcast mailbag segment as well. You'll find Today in BC podcasts on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, iHeart, and Google Podcasts.